Hello and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's session. We'd like to welcome everyone who's joining us this morning. My name is Martin Wanjohi from High Performance Africa, and we're pleased to have you here. Thank you to the 39 HR professionals who have joined us. And I'm seeing people from Zambia. As you join, you can share with us which country you're joining us from, so that we know who we have in the room. Thank you. If you can hear us, if you can hear my voice, kindly type yes on chat. If you can't hear me, type no, and then we'll have someone try and help you out. Great. So I'm seeing we have participants from Kenya. Okay, we want to know where you're from. So, okay, good. Tanzania, I think Kenya, great. Nigeria, thank you very much. Zambia, Zimbabwe. Do you have people from Zambia, Zimbabwe? Let's see. Yousouf, you have people from home.
Hey, I've got my brother Kailash here. Kailash here.
Okay.
Welcome,
Thank
Kailash.
you very much. Today, it's our pleasure. We have Yousouf from Mauritius and Roselyne. And today we conclude our discussion about humans and the workplace. And our key topics today revolve around competencies and then leadership. So I have Yousouf and Roselyne. You could briefly just introduce yourself, and then we can start off today's session.
Okay. Thanks, Captain. I'm Roselyne Raelly, Director Human Resource for Center for Infectious Disease Research in Zambia. And I see Tamara, one of my colleagues, is online. Welcome. I am academically FCIS with an MBA. I have experience in HR for over 25 years. I don't like to say much about myself. I'm just a servant of the people, that's all.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yousouf?
Right, thank you. So I'll keep it short. So me, I'm from Yousouf Jookhun from Afri Talent Group of companies. So we are based in Mauritius, and we also incorporate in Rwanda, and we've got footprint across Africa. So I'm an anchor from Barclays. So I've been been working in Africa for the past 10 years. So we've been through a lot of challenges and seeing a lot of great things happening in Africa too. So I've had the opportunities to work with many leaders and on key leadership development initiatives across Africa. And there's so much experience that we would like to share with you. So hopefully this session will allow us to share whatever we can in half an hour. So looking forward to your comments and suggestions, and maybe to meet one of these days.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So to start us off today, we want to, we have some few questions just to get us where we are. Okay, I think I'm having a small issue with chat. I'll just resolve it shortly. Okay, so from participants, we're seeing we have a few people again from Nigeria. Now, I think we might have to do the poll manually. I don't know what happened with the poll. We'd like to know which areas people are in. Okay. Sorry. Now, if you can see a poll there on your screen, kindly type a yes just to see whether it's technical hitches. If you have, okay. Sorry, apologies for that. This is not what we wanted to share. We have some other questions. Let me just pull them up. Okay, great. So so we have this poll for today. One, do you think Africa has potential for great leadership in business organization? So we want to take this poll. So question number one is, do you think Africa has potential for great leadership in business organizations? I'm seeing there's someone who says they can't hear us. Kindly check your audio, because when we did the check, most of the people were able to hear us, so problems would be from your end. Just check that from your end, kindly, please. Okay, so we have 3 questions. We have 11 people who so far who have taken this poll. There are 3 questions which represents your current area at work, multiple choice. Just know what distribution we have in terms of areas from the HR side. Good. Let's try and have 35 people vote, and then we can see. Okay, so far we have 32 people. Okay, just to close the poll, we have 43 people, 45. Let me close and then share the results. Joy, I think the problem, anybody who cannot see us, the panelist on screen, if you can see the panelist, kindly type yes. Why? Then we try and sort out something with one person. So great. So problem is not from our end. So great. Thank you very much for the feedback. So just to share the results of this, what we had. So a large percent, 98% believe Africa has potential for great leadership in business organizations. 56% have identified the competencies we need for the future. And we have spread in terms of people who are here. We have people in management, from performance, from strategy, from compensation and benefits, general HR, others. Interesting, would be very interesting to know others or it's L&D. I'll assume others is L&D for the purposes of today, right? Okay, so I think, let me just stop sharing results. I think Yousouf and Roselyne, I think we know who we have here. We know the people we have. We know what people are thinking. So Roselyne, we'll start with you. We agreed ladies first. Yeah? And from your perspective, in terms of talent, do we have it right in terms of the competencies and how we are preparing? From the poll I saw, 40% identified the competencies they need for the future.
Okay, so when you talk about competencies, I wouldn't want to say that we don't have the competencies already developed. I think the competencies are there. It's a matter of the how to apply those competencies. Most of the, okay, so when you talk of competencies, you have the technical competencies, you have the behavioral competencies, and there's another competency level, which is the leadership competence. So when you are talking about, do we have the competence developed for the future? Yes, we do. We all went to school. We all have our qualifications. We all have our technical competencies that are required. We add on to those technical competencies as we go back to school. But the soft side, the soft skill side, which is the behavioral competencies, is actually something that you as an individual have to develop to meet the job requirements. So you talk of decision-making, creativity, and all that. Those are the competencies that are required, not just for today, but for the future as well, because every organization works towards high performing for results. So whether it's today, tomorrow, or in the future, or there's a disaster, organizations want to sustain positive results, which is the best profit or whatever the stakeholders are expecting. So my answer is we do have competencies, but maybe how to apply them that we need to look at individually as well as the readiness for the organization to tap into individual competencies.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Rose. So maybe you could share with us in the Infectious Diseases Institute, how are you preparing for the future in terms of skills and competencies?
So our environment has changed a lot because the landscape for delivery of service in the public health sector, before we're being funded a lot to provide direct service delivery to the Ministry of Health. But now it's a technical advisory role, which is more of a consulting role to the Ministry of Health. The question one needs to ask is, what do we need to do now for us to be able to move above the day-to-day direct service delivery, which we are in mainly in the infectious disease, the main one is HIV. We now need to start looking at developing creativity, innovation. What advice can I provide to Ministry of Health staff who are already qualified medical people, able to provide a service that is over and above the current levels. So we are working on that heavily so. We are developing that and including training our staff to be able to tap into their innovation and creativity areas.
Okay, thank you very much. So what we had wanted to discuss, or what we had themed your session was ordinary is usual. So we need new ways, new methods of thinking at the workplace, yeah? And I've just realized infectious disease is right at the center of things as they are right now. So in terms of competencies and skills you'd need to develop within the organization, what has COVID or what has the situation, what has been the learning from the situation?
Okay, so I want to talk about an area of business continuity planning, which normally in a day-to-day environment, we do not dwell on it. Very few organizations will actually come up with that section for business continuity. So if the organization itself, we are in infectious disease, we deal with pandemics, and we know that these outbreaks can happen. But I can tell you COVID has taken us in infectious disease as well by surprise. We are not too sure whether we are going or coming and all that. However, despite that, work has continued for us because we are heavily involved with providing help with Ministry of Health. We are working almost 80% virtual, except for our essential workers who are in the front line. Now, the question one needs to ask is, did we plan for this? I think that's where the competence missed on our part. And I think that's where the competence missed in most of the organization is planning for business continuity in times of pandemics, disasters. Now, let me also say this. There's no perfect planning that is foolproof when disasters happen. I was in Jamaica one time when heavy disaster took place. We had planned way ahead of time as a university where I was working, but we did run off. Okay. So the issue is, how do you plan to make sure that business does not come to a halt? What competences, even in the business continuity planning, do you need? Again, it's a regular competences on the side. There and then, decisions which will stand the test of time. It's creativity, it's innovation, persuasion. You should be able to persuade your staff. You can do it. You can work from home. You can work and still be productive. Collaboration, because you know, collaboration in a virtual environment is kind of difficult, especially with peers. Currently with COVID, we are not just dealing with productivity in the workplace, we are dealing with an emotional side of employees as well. So from the HR point of view, you have to be the burden bearer. Be ready to provide comfort while you're scared yourself, whether you get this COVID or not. So I would also say the ability to be able to handle the emotional side of the employee is also a key competence. Time management. How many of us can stay home and honestly say you are putting in 8 hours of work? So the employer ought to feel they are getting their money's worth. On my part, I'm doing more working from home in the office actually. Adaptability. From the HR point of view, we are so used to paper pushing, files, things like that. Like if you're not at the office, things can't be done. One of the biggest needs for a human being is socializing. And some of us meet that in the workplace. How do you make sure then that your staff members in their virtual environment are still meeting their social needs? So those are some of the competencies that we need to start thinking of. Then now you're into creativity and innovation. Above all, it's self-management and discipline coupled with integrity. So from my part, I would say these are key competencies, which are competencies that are even now, but we just need to make sure that we're applying them, developing them. And for any high-performing organizations, whether there's a disaster or not, these competencies are key.
Okay, so just maybe the last thing I'd like to, maybe we can discuss about, what would you advise HR professionals to do so that they're not caught flat-footed, just like we got caught flat-footed with the by COVID?
We need to prepare for the worst case scenario every day as HR people. Because, you know, maybe COVID, it's a pandemic worldwide, but as HR people with of emergencies every day they come on our desk. How well do you make decisions? Are you routine or are you an exception or thinking outside the box? Now there's an aspect of thinking outside the box. You should see the box first, huh? Because if you don't see the box, you can't think outside. So it's important you see the box. What is the mission? What are the objectives? What is it that you're in that workplace for? Are you there just to be routine, where you are almost taking a textbook? You know, HR profession is very, it's unique in that you can't get a textbook every day to say, how do I respond to this? We are managing human beings, which are unique, using the Bible, fearfully and wonderfully made, and very difficult to manage. Today, this person is thinking this way, they are laughing, tomorrow there's something else. They bring their baggage from home to the office, and as an HR person, you're supposed to identify that and still be able to provide the responses, the comfort, the needs that employees have, to ensure that the organization is meeting the psychological aspect of the contract.
Okay, thank you very much, Rose. Yousouf. Yousouf, you can Yousouf, you can hear me? Yes. I think, okay, great.
Hear me now.
Now I'd like to you, and you could maybe share with us leadership, what we need, what are we doing, what are we getting right? Because if we were to go by what the poll said, Africa would not be where, well, I think we have potential. But then someone last year told me potential is the most thing, because you can't say how many kilos of does someone have, right? So potential remains just that, potential, something we can't see, we can't stand to anything. So maybe you could help us understand. We have great possibilities with leaders in the organization, but we're not seeing things happening. We're not seeing greatness. Maybe you could share with us.
Right. I think there are it like this. I think there are a lot of reality in what you say. I'm not saying this is the truth. This is enough people, because when you measure potential useless. There are so many things that we cannot measure. Oh, because we don't know how to, then we say we don't have it. And you know, I've been working with the past 10 as a banker. Bankers, we have the tendency to measure everything, and we like to look for it. I invested a lot of money, and our co-thing, it is a key question that we ask ourselves: what is an investment? How is it aligned to its strategy, and how allow us to deliver the goods? And so if there is no measure, I don't spend a cent. We will not be spending any money. Right? I can use the budget that we had, for example, at Barclays was huge for Africa, right? It's I prefer not to say a figure, but so let me share my screen with you. I would like you to see this, right? Can you see elephant?
Yes, yes. Maybe you could just maximize it so that it fills the screen and be able to.
Yes, please, please. So I'm not going to differ that much with what Roselyne has said. I think what she has said is spot on, and I've linked to her area. And in fact, the pandemic has allowed us to see another perspective on what leadership can do, right? And how it can impact a country and the economy, right? So can you see me, because I've lost the screen here?
Yeah, well, you need to do the what do you call it, presentation mode.
Presentation mode.
Yes, just to expand the screen to fit the
Right. Can you see the screen here?
You can try and then start from the beginning. I can see the screen.
Can you see the slideshow?
Yes, but it's not maximized.
All right, and now I think I need to swap this. Sorry about this. Let me put it like this. All right, can you see the screen well now?
Oh, we are seeing you on the screen.
You're seeing me?
Yes.
I'm not the elephant. Right?
Oh no, the zoom, you just put the zoom into the screen. Yeah.
So is it better now?
No, we're still seeing the projection of the meeting, yes.
I'm not sure what's happening here.
Or we could end the screen share and then you try it again.
Right. Is it good now?
Yeah, we are seeing the presentation.
Right. Let me bring this to so I think if you look at it from a perspective, because the whole thing is about bringing perspective to Africa. So what we have seen so far is what the world has a certain vision, and even us Africans, we have a vision of Africa which is far from the truth. My first visit to Africa was in Kenya. So then when I was going there, so I was thinking, man, what's going to happen to me? It's what a business trip, and I was seeing the desert everywhere and whatnot. And then I was surprised to discover Nairobi, which was kind of a bustling city, development everywhere, and it was greener than Mauritius. And I regretted not having brought, a pullover. It was cold. And the vision that was provided to us out of Africa is a very different one, far from reality. The picture that we see is an Africa with people, kids with those mosquitoes. Here's a picture which is out there, right? And ourselves, the story that we tell ourselves is not the right one. And moreover, this, if you Google, if you type poor or poverty, you will see up among the top lists that comes is poverty in Africa, right? But then, if you do a little search about Africa, in Africa, you've got more than 400 companies in Africa that generate over 1 billion USD each. These are the pictures that we don't see, that we don't tell ourselves that how good we are. Africa is 11 million square miles larger than China, plus US and Europe combined. This is how big we are, right? In terms of consumer spending, right? The consumer spending is 1.4 trillion USD more than India, right? That's huge. And Africa has got the richest concentration of natural resources. It is estimated around 30% of natural resources, mineral resources are found in the continent, right? And the biggest resource, in the world right now which is impacting everything, is population, right? And Africa, in fact, has the world's youngest population. 6% of Africa's population is under 25 years old, where the whole of the world is aging, right? And with all the challenges that come with aging population, Africa is here with this huge pool of talent that needs to be tapped. And this is where, for example, if you dwell on this, this is why we need to have great leadership in place. And we need to start believing on in terms of what we can do. So, and the stories that we need to tell ourselves. So I think I'm going to kind of quickly reinforce the potential that we have of African potential, not only in Africa, but across the world, right? So did you know that in the 1970s, not in 1970, in the 17th century, there was a slave called Onesimus, right, who shared a revolutionary way to prevent smallpox. At that point in time, smallpox was bigger than coronavirus. And this was discovered and shared by an African. And in what condition? In a condition of slavery. So if it doesn't mean potential, I don't know what potential means, right? So there are so many inventions by Africans. You've got the first home security system with camera and phone was invented by Mary Witten Brown in 1960. The traffic lights was invented by an African guy. And I go on like this. The first IBM PC monitor was co-invented by Mark Dean in 1980. And the first gigahertz chip, which revolutionized, in fact, the whole of the IT industry, was done by the same guy in the 1999. So if that doesn't mean potential, I don't know what potential means. And for the best athletes are from Africa. Africa won the World Cup. We like it or don't, we don't like it. We won the World Cup. So I think it just demonstrates the level of potential that is out there. And even from a leadership perspective is Africa has been the cradle of great leadership. So there we've got the biggest leaders in the world, right, in terms of leadership, the real ones. The first one that will come to our mind is Nelson Mandela. You've got Lumumba, you've got Stephen Biko, and then this goes on. So, but hello? Hello? I think I've lost you. Hello? Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So this being said, just kind of to confirm that we've got potential narrative which has to change, right? In terms of believing in terms of our potential and doing what needs to be done. So there have been surveys that have been conducted by many research organizations. I can pick up PL from McKinsey and from other organizations, right? So there are some consensus which are in leaders, right? So these are kind of, I was saying, as you can see on this, is the ability, the competency to lead diverse teams, being adaptable and to the changing world of work, right? So that capacity to manage change, to be agile, being able to have a good level of self-awareness, right? The ability to transfer knowledge, to coach subordinates, right? To to encourage collaboration and to ensure and orchestrate employee engagement or employee experience and dealing with complexity. And these key skills that can be developed and unlock, which will unlock the potential that we want. What we need to bear in mind that African development challenges are complex and multifaceted, right? So in fact, the development of Africa ultimately depends on the capacity of people who are in leadership positions to comprehend the complete ecosystem, and which is the local one. It needs the ecosystem also regional and global, right? And I think the pandemic has demonstrated how global we are. So, and these individuals must in fact have the competencies in place, to bring Africa to its due place to the world, right? Because we can have all these resources, have youth, have all the potential. If it is not harnessed and used in the proper way, it's going to go waste, right? And then you will see other people coming and exploiting, and we just kind of, you know, become employees, right? Operate at a very low level. And I hope I'm doing good on time, right? So
you're good on time. You're good on time.
Right. So in terms of, you know, Nelson Mandela said, a leader is like a shepherd, right? He stays behind the flock, letting the most nimble go on ahead, whereupon others follow, not realizing that all they are being directed from behind. So I think this is the type of leadership that Nelson Mandela has shown, right? And you know, today, based on, hello?
Yes, yes,
The thing is, I was saying, just in continuity, is that so today, while business leaders in Africa are excited by the many opportunities, and we can see that people talking that there's so much we can do in Africa, so much we want to do in Africa. But the key thing is tapping in those opportunities requires significant skill. And as international companies are rushing and are still rushing, and we've seen an increased pace of foreign organizations coming to Africa, right? And the challenge is developing appropriate offerings, staff, aligning business partners in different countries adds to complexity at all levels of leadership. So the challenge of leaders now is about the ability to prepare organizations, the people, to be able to leverage on all this FDI which is coming in Africa, right? So if there is a poll which is out, right? I think you can see here. So this is kind of, there were some researchers which were being done, right, by CCL across Africa. And these are the things, in fact, came out. So this was done by managers, right? This is a view of where the leadership team is. I think you can see, can you see where, and there's a comparison to Europe. I can share those afterwards. And you see Africa is in a very good position, right? The 7 and the 13, the red demonstrate how good we are. So we are in a very good space. I can share that afterwards. I need just conscious of time. So, as I was saying initially, it's unfortunate that the leadership in Africa is far too often presented as in the form of being dysfunctional and derailed. There is some truth in this, but it's not everywhere, right? So an abundance, in fact, of sound and reasonable leaders on all levels and dimensions. However, these leaders have now to emerge and become visible. And leadership development is a key to leverage, a key leverage point, in fact, in the development and transformation of the continent. And we're able to do this, right? In fact, it's about being able to, let me move on, so you can see also, I'm big it into screens. But now it's about developing the capacity, in fact, to build in the new narrative. So we've been spent so much time for the narrative that we have. So it's about building the new narrative in terms of where we want to be and what we are going to do about it, right? So we realize that leadership is one of the most critical factors for success in Africa. That organizations need to invest in leadership and talent for the future of the organization. And effective leadership can build this, is required to build the skills in people and the organization. And leaders need to go through continuous learning, right? And leadership development is a strategic investment that organizations cannot avoid. And the thing is, if you look at Africa, is we've seen different models and with the challenges of those models, right? So we have sometimes got the temptation to import Western models. And what we've seen is that these models will not work in Africa. There's some part of it that we can take. So the thing is, just like in Singapore, they've got their competency frameworks. There's been collaboration between the different parties with the private sector, public, collaborate together to define competencies by industry. And these competencies, in fact, are aligned to the strategy of the country. So you've got strategy for 10 years. So for 10 years is what are the competencies are required industry per level. And this is how the competence the contract is designed and implemented, right? And where this is where the funding goes. It's not just funding anywhere without ensuring the outcome, right? So the key thing, how does this work? The model that I've been implementing in several countries in Africa, and it works well in the banking sector, and I think it's going to work. It works well in many sectors also. It's having competency, a model which is aligned to the strategy of the country or the organization. Or maybe we can focus on the organization, it's easier to do. So irrespective of the organization, it's about having a model which is aligned to the strategy, to the strategy of the organization, to the balanced scorecard, and the performance management tools. It cannot be something separate. So once we have unpacked this, we have translated this into clear objectives and goals. This is where, in fact, we need to define the competency framework, what it means. Because competency, for example, you might have a version of a definition of competency. I have a different one. So then how do we build that competency if it is not clear for everyone, right? If we are not aligned. So alignment is key. So that then we define the competency. And there the design needs to be collaborative. In an organization, it cannot be same as the competences which are required. The competences, HR provides, in fact, the guidance, the technique, the tools, facilitate the session, but the competency framework is designed in collaboration with the business. And it has to be owned by the business. And HR comes into having the conversation with the business is it's aligned to the competency and to the strategy and in the implementation. And together with this is where you will see talent management works. So talent is canvassed on the competency framework. Else you just grow people who spend money and you're not sure what the outcome is going to be. So you implement talent management, it works in pair, and you need to have the return on investment model, which needs to be there. So the return on investment model is also aligned to the strategic alignment. You see how everything is aligned, right? So once this is done, so now it's about moving to assessment, right? So previously, I think Roselyne mentioned about being able to, the abilities that you were talking about. So the way to assess abilities, so you've got two types of abilities. I mean, you've got the cognitive ability and to measure. One has got the capacity to analyze data, diagrammatic thinking. So these are things that we need to analyze the cognitive abilities, because we can be spending money on someone who is not trainable because the IQ is too small with regard to the job that person has to do. And then we keep on pushing that person despite all the will and effort, that person will not be able to do, because we put the wrong person there. So the thing is ensuring that we've got people who are trainable, who've got the right level of IQ, and then we build on the EQ also. So all these are being assessed. So once it's being assessed, we put those people into a learning and an ongoing learning and development journey where they feel challenged, and they have also to implement the learning and learning how to be lifelong, right? So when we talk about implementing learning, there are different ways and means on doing that depending on what we want to achieve, right? I cannot be prescriptive here. So this is in a nutshell, in fact, which is kind of usable, right? Can be used, but needs to be customized on each organization needs. So voila, in a nutshell, that was a long presentation.
I think it's long and interesting. Rose, Roselyne, just to come back to you. What do you think is the future of talent retention for organizations?
I think talent retention is key, but I want to go back a little to tap into what Yousouf said, to link it to talent retention. You know, competences are there even in our personal lives. Huh? However, for an organization to return an employee, there are two parameters or aspects that we need to look at. The first one is when you are hiring, make sure you are hiring an organizational fit candidate. So for you to return or to manage your talent, it all starts with recruitment. Is the individual you are hiring an organizational fit to the organization? In other words, are their personal values in line with the organizational mission, vision, values, objectives? If they're in, then you are hiring somebody who is coming in a workplace to do a job as a hobby. You know, when you're doing a hobby, you enjoy it. You go a mile. You develop excellence. That is key when it comes to retention. Aspect number two is job fit. Yes, you have hired somebody who has organizational fit qualities, but is there a job fit? How do you get them to be fitted to the job? They may have the qualifications, technical competences, they may have the know-how, but do they have the soft skills, behavioral competences? You can have a very high-performing employee with a terrible attitude. Retention becomes a problem. So one of the key issues of retention as well is attitude, which is also key competence. Positive attitude, can-do attitude, not talking down to self or other people. I would even say not yes, sir. You should be able to call the question. Not afraid. Decisions are being made. Are they correct? Are we making decisions in an environment of integrity? You should be able to call the question. So retention, I wouldn't just say retention, Martin. I would say retention for high-performing organizations. So it starts with the type of people that you are hiring. You should make sure there's organizational fit, there's job with all its competencies, and a can-do attitude.
Thank you very much, Roselyne. there's something that has been coming back to my mind from our conversation on Sunday. That when we were talking about Africans having been leaders for since time immemorial, well, where have we lost those leadership skills or traits in the present?
So I don't think we have lost those. It's just, you know, it's the way that we tell a story. The story which is being told about Africa, be by Africans or by external, is not the right one. Not picturing the right Africa as it should be. The examples I gave are kind of, I mean, if you start, right, Jesus was not a white man. He was, sorry, I might be kind of tough here, but I will get to the point. He was in the African region. So you've got, and Moses also. So it's all the way that things get kind of painted. And if we take Mandela, he is indisputably the best leader we had for centuries. He is a guy who could have, in fact, you know, bring one way of justice, kind of wiping out all the white population from South Africa. He didn't do this. And who in the world has been a leader like this, right? I cannot find someone else. So, but beyond this, right, I think the potential is there. We need to realize it. But I would like to get to the point that it's about the story that we tell ourselves, and also to talk about talent retention. So talent retention is key for Africa. Why? Because if you don't retain your talent, they're going to go elsewhere. They're going to be pushed. Look at, for example, the US is an aging population. So yes, they have built the wall, but they're going to call for talent coming from Africa. In Mauritius, I can give you an example. There are so many people from Africa who are here to study and to work. So there are some areas where we don't have Mauritians, we get people from America who go there. So there is that war for talent, which has started and is going to happen. So right now, I think the fact there is a high level of unemployment in Africa, people tend to think that I can hire, fire as I wish. And I've seen that in so many countries, right? But very soon, just like in Mauritius, hire someone, you won't get someone to resign. The same is going to happen in Africa because these people will move across. And this is linked to the demographics, the aging population in China, Mauritius, in Europe. So who's going to make those business run? Who's going to pay for the pension of those guys who have retired? It is going to be people from Africa and from Bangladesh and Pakistan, those regions where the population is young, right? So, and about talent retention, it's about putting the right framework in place so that you can groom people and retain them. So retainment, yes, the employee has some responsibility, but the organization also has a responsibility to create an environment where people want to stay. It's not that I have to stay or else I don't have a job. It should not be like this. I mean, this is our perspective, that my experience with regards to talent retention. I hope I've answered your question for the leadership part. If you take a look at history, you will see we have had the best leaders from Africa.
Okay, great. Roselyne, a question for you, and I think this fits you very well. Huh? So, the question is, how do we as HR manage the balanced scorecard and the performance management programs to ensure they do not take so much productive time from employees and line managers? In my experience, quarterly review sessions usually take 2 weeks out of the quarter to complete effectively. This takes away from productive time. Roselyne, let me leave you, have you answer that, yeah.
Thank you. I think he was presenting, he talked about us importing foreign concepts. I would like to bring it down that there's really nothing wrong in us benchmarking. I don't want to call it importing because it actually makes them fit into our environment. There's nothing wrong in us benching or bringing in concepts like balanced scorecard, which have been developed elsewhere, into our HR arena to develop a high performance work culture. It's contextualizing of those concepts that is important. One weakness that I have found, because where I work right now, we use a balanced scorecard, and it has taken 2 years for us to really get it embedded as part of the culture. One of the issues with our work environment I have learned with time in the human resources is that managers would like to manage without benchmarks or without how to measure what they are managing. And that's a disaster for failure, not just for the manager or for the department. It's a recipe of disaster for the organization. So how do you make sure that a balanced scorecard does not take a lot of your time? Bear in mind, the balanced scorecard is not just at individual level. You've got tier 1, which is an organizational strategic plan. You need to break it down to tier 2, which is a department. You need to break it down to the individual, which is the individual performance appraisal. Managers need to be taught that this is a tool to help them with performance on quarterly basis. It's a tool to help them monitor, manage performance daily basis. It makes it much, much easier when you manage an employee going through their objectives, looking at the areas of weaknesses, identifying areas where they need to perform, to mentor and coach if you do it regularly. If you are going to wait until quarterly, this is where a lot of subjectivity goes in as you do your performance reviews. Because you've spent 4 months, 6 months, without really following up where your subordinate is failing. You find it extremely difficult to correct them when the time for review comes. Whereas if it's a discussion on a daily basis, weekly basis, you are reviewing your performance, you are pointing out, you are also mentoring your subordinates. Bear in mind, you have good performing subordinates who excels, you do as a manager. So it's a cultural change. You need to let them realize that this is not just a quarterly thing. Over the organizational policy where you are saying, we will review performance quarterly or half yearly. You need to encourage them to develop their own performance plans as to how they will manage their units. Encourage them to be able to have performance feedback. Now, culturally, we have problems telling other people that they are not performing, especially when you are dangling a carrot of a reward. Now, reward is not just money. Reward is even affirming somebody that they are doing well. Feel good that they are adding value to the workplace. To encourage them weekly, monthly, as they have their monthly meeting, have reviews of performance. And don't just review, affirm good performance as well. You know, you have meetings, oh, this month, so and so did well. On customer service, this person did extremely well. So it's not just a once-off. If you make it a once-off, quarterly, year, or there will be a lot of subjectivity, people will run over it, and you will not be able to link individual performance to the overall organizational performance. You might find at individual level, you are exceeding, and yet organization-wise, you are not moving anywhere. And that is because you are doing it once in a while. Now, for a balanced scorecard, it should link. When you consolidate all your individual performances, they should be able to have an input into your departmental performance. And if individuals, you are below meeting performance as a department, how did you meet? already there's a question to deal with. And if as a department you haven't met an overall organization, you've gone above, how will the organization meet if the soldiers on the ground form? So I would encourage that if you are using the balance scorecard, even just regular performance appraisal from the traditional strategic plan, make sure you make it part of their everyday work. And that's the challenge for HR. You know, we are not just here to manage, but we have to sell the performance appraisal. We have to sell policy. We have to sell all these things to the organization. Become a strategic partner.
Okay, thank you very much. Yousouf, very interesting question here for you. Janet asks, from the survey, which are the major leadership competencies that leaders need to leverage on? I guess it's from the survey you were showing us.
Yeah, maybe I can.
Sorry, for Yousouf, Roselyne.
Yeah, you are breaking.
Okay.
You mean the leadership competence?
Yousouf.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Can you see the screen?
If I can repeat the question?
Yes, please.
From the survey, which are the major leadership competencies that leaders need to leverage on?
They need to build on, you mean?
To leverage, to use like the lever towards. Which are the critical? Basically, I think is.
I mean, it's the key competencies, right? This is what we are saying. Yes. What is the key competencies which are required? So based on the survey, there is. I will just note what came in red is decisiveness, straightforwardness and composure, right? And leading employees. These are the is topping. Right, but if we look at what are the competencies we need to, the key basic competencies we need to have in place is the competency of leading a diverse team, the competency of being agile, adaptable to the changing world of work, right, and the competency of being able to look at be vulnerable, reflect on developmental areas, high level self-awareness, right? Build on one's EQ, the ability to coach, to transfer knowledge, okay, and the competency to be able to collaborate and communicate, and to foster another competency about engagement, and finally to be able to deal with complexity. I do hope this answers the question.
Yes, yes, thank you very much, Yousouf. Now, we have about 3 minutes. So in those 3 minutes, I'd like to pass the question to Rose, and then we can close the session. And we'd also like to thank the 127 HR practitioners who have joined us today. Thank you very much. Also glad to see Chana. Welcome very much. Okay, so Roselyne, the question is, how do you manage employee performance in this chaotic times?
Okay, so I think when I was presenting, you noticed I talked of performance reviews should be continuous. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether there's COVID, where somebody's working from home or not. If it is continuous, they have deliverables that they need to meet. So you're not going to start putting out deliverables or objectives that they need to meet because you have COVID. You already mentor organizational individual card. And whatever they are supposed to do should be reportable on daily basis, on weekly basis, depending on how you've scheduled your reporting lines when it comes to COVID. Yes, they are working from home. There are also actually softwares that you can use. My view in life, personal view in life is never use a stick to get people to work. I think it's a combo, but self-discipline and self-management leadership, so to say. So who have deliverables, they do have their objectives, and you follow those up for reporting, because if you're heading a department, you need to do a report as to your performance, regardless of whether you were home or not. You can't give an excuse of virtual working and say, well, I didn't manage because people were not in office. So the same objectives, you follow them up, pick up what it is that they're supposed to be doing, let them report on it on weekly basis or mid-weekly basis. Makes it much easier, actually. I've discovered my staff are working much harder, even myself, in this virtual environment.
Okay, so Yousouf, let's start with the men now. Last words as we close today's session.
Oh, today's session.
Yes.
I think my experience has been, this was a great session. A lot of learning from me on this webinar with my fellow from Africa. So I do hope this, the learning, I mean, I have been able to share something with you guys, look from my experience. And time being of essence, there's so much we have to say, but we can only be restricted due to time. So I think it was a great opportunity. So if you want, I can share the PowerPoint with you. It's a straightforward one. You can have a look at, or I can put the chat here. You guys can access it. There's so much information in there. You can have a look for yourself. So if ever you have a question, you can reach out. We're glad to share. I mean, knowledge is meant to be shared. So thanks again for the opportunity. It was a privilege to be able to share whatever I knew, the little I knew with you guys. So look forward to be able to join in for another time, for another session, maybe another topic, or maybe in depth on talent management. And my humble view is that Africa has got potential. We need to find the right ways and means to harness this potential.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Roselyne?
Thank you so much, Martin, for having us participate on this panel. I have learned a lot from Yousouf, and the questions that are being asked have been challenging. Actually, I have to think quickly and practice it. But in closing, I just want to say to my fellow HR practitioners out there, those that are on this panel and everywhere else, your relevance to the workplace is tested in a time of disaster. Maybe you have it, but reality is that leadership seek help from the HR for answers on how the human being in the workplace can be managed during a time like this. So we are not just paper pushers, we are strategic, we are key, because we are managing the most important resource in the organization, not computers, not chairs, but the human being who has feelings, attitudes, and emotions. And as such, we are more than the psychologists, actually. So let's be creative, let's be innovative, let's be empathetic, let's be understanding, let's be loving, caring out there, as well as firm to manage when things don't go wrong. So much, Martin, and thanks to everybody out there.
Okay, thank you very much, Roselyne. Thank you very much, Yousouf. Now, I've seen Yousouf has shared the presentation. You can download it, and if you have any questions, I think you can get in touch. We will share an email, a link to this session by the end of the day, and we'll also have both Roselyne's and Yousouf LinkedIn, so you can connect with them to continue these conversations. We'd like to wish each HR professional here today a happy International HR Day. And the theme this year is HR, connecting people and organizations. And we hope we are being able to do that. And we would like to welcome you next week for our sessions. We will be sharing the sessions. Next week, we might look deeply into learning and development. And hopefully, if you're keen on learning and development, we would like to request you to join us. Now, we sent out an email last night with a link in the email to the presentation. I'm seeing someone who did not see it. If you look at that email, you'll see the link to the video for yesterday's session. Kindly have a look at that. And if you find our email in your spam box, kindly move it to inbox so that you can regularly see our communication. We'd like very much thank you for being honoring us with your time. I think today, Yousouf, we had about 127 participants
that's nice,
in this session. And we thank everyone for coming to being part of this. So we'd like to wish everyone a happy International Human Resource Day, a great week, and we will have our session again as usual, Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Join us next week. And our next week, we focus on learning and development. And again, I'd like to thank Yousouf and Roselyne, and thank you very much, everyone, for being with us. Thank you very much.
Martin.
Have a great day,
Thank
everyone.
you, Martin. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.
Yousouf.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Roselyne. Bye-bye. Bye.